Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming. Welcome to another Snap Judgement review. What's a Snap Judgement review? Well, in gaming, I feel like reviewers often overlook short periods of play and the early parts of games in favor of the game as a whole, because they're forced to kind of play it to 100%. So I play about 5 to 10 hours with the game, and I'm giving you an idea whether you're going to enjoy it right off the bat or not. That, coupled with the fact that I think games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I'm not going to be giving a score to this review. Instead, I'm going to tell you what the game is overall, and then I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons of the game, in my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'll tell you whether I personally will be sticking with the game or DLC outside the purposes of this video. Now, what am I reviewing today? I'm reviewing the Lamplighters League, Paradox's new CRPG. Just came out. It came out in Xbox Game Pass day one, as well as in all the other special places. So what is Lamplighters League? Well, Lamplighters League kind of is in the vein of like an Indiana Jones or a Pulp Fiction kind of story from like the, 50s, 60s sort of thing, like post-World War II era sort of feel to it. What you do in this are there are these three very evil scions that control different armies of evil and control different facets of the government and whatnot. And the people who oppose them were the Lamplighters. Well, the Lamplighters are all dead except for one who's sad and old and drunk, but he's still trying to fight them. However, he does it by recruiting thieves and scoundrels and all sorts of other people from around the globe that'll just do it for the money that he has. The game itself is kind of this race between him and the Banished Court, which are these three evil scions, to get to something called the Tower at the end of the universe. Basically, it's a MacGuffin. While sparing you a lot of stuff, it's a MacGuffin where if you enter the tower at the end of the universe, you end up getting the power of all creation itself. Obviously, that would be bad if any of the very, very, very almost comically evil bad guys got to it first, but instead you and your Lamplighters have to get to it first. You'll have to balance this in missions. CRPG missions, you'll kind of load into a slightly procedurally generated maps. Slightly meaning they're all kind of familiar with some obstacles changed. Maybe your starting point is a little different, and the types of enemies you're taking on often get changed and different. You'll jump into these missions, these globe-trotting missions. You get to take 3, sometimes 4 of your Lamplighters with you. You start with 3 Lamplighters, and you have to kind of search out other Lamplighters as you go along. And that's the balancing act, is you have to kind of balance finding new Lamplighters and supplies against actually bringing down what's called threat levels. This is something that I thought was very interesting in this game. Each one of the Banished Court has like a ticker at the top of the map. The ticker goes up when you don't go after them, and the ticker goes down when you do. The whole reason for this ticker is it's how long it's going to take until that scion enters the tower and you lose. So you have to constantly be balancing which one of the scions you're going after to keep their threat low, while also balancing recruiting new Lamplighters, getting new supplies to upgrade your Lamplighters, stuff like that. What I also found interesting is as the threat goes up, their missions actually get harder. You'll fight bigger, more scarier enemy types with different powers and all sorts of stuff across the board. The missions themselves take place in 2 different ways. One is a real-time mode where you take in your 3 or 4. You can actually split them off into like one at a time and switch between them or keep them as a group. Each one has their own way of stealth attacking, and while you're in the real-time mode, you're kind of trying to trot around the map and not get caught. You can also take out bad guys and whatnot and hope they don't find you. Basically take as many of them out as you can before they realize they're being attacked, when it then turns into your classic CRPG turn-based, hex-based strategy sort of fight. With the characters themselves being very ability-based in this, and it is one thing that I found a little bit different between this and some other CRPGs, is they have wide ranges of abilities that do all sorts of different things in this, and I found it very interesting and kind of compelling, the amount of combos that you can work with the characters. But that's what you'll do. So you'll try and make kind of like your best group to go on a mission, and then you also get some one-time use items that you can also collect in the mission itself, and your whole thing is you have to do the mission and then get to an escape point. So yeah, that's basically the kind of overview of the game. I don't want to go into any more because it would be a little bit spoilery, but you also kind of collect other things to kind of aid your hideout to help you out in your battle against the Scions. So let's get into the pros and cons, because I have a lot of them. On both sides. Right off the bat, I want to shout out the narration in this game. And we're going to go into another one right from here, but they have narrative info drops on the bad guys, which I found so cool. It's something I've been missing since back in the days of Mass Effect 1, where you had a voice where you could go to that codex and he would read every entry to you. I don't like to read in my video games. It's work for me. I want somebody to read it to me. And in this, every time you meet a new enemy type, it'll just pop up it'll pause everything, it'll pop up a little info bar and lock your main lamplighter character who's still alive, who's gathering everybody, who you don't get to play. He's just kind of like the Professor X of the group, I guess. Will kind of read off what this bad guy is. I found this so cool, so refreshing, and so nice that they're just constantly feeding you about the world. And to tail right into my next pro, the voice acting in this is exquisite. So many CRPGs nowadays are text-based or voice acting light, I guess you would say. There is limited voice acting in certain areas, but overall, you have I would say 80% to 85% of the lines that the characters say to each other is completely voice acted, and voice acted amazingly. The guy who does Locke is phenomenal. All of the characters I found really cool, fleshed out, and unique. One thing I've always noticed about team-based games where you're like controlling a whole team, but you have to pick a couple to go on a mission, is I usually get my favorites right off the bat, and that's who I want to play. With this game, I just love all the characters. So I find myself doing a healthy rotation of them. Kind of seeing where they place me and what I can do with them, and I think that's really cool. That's another one of my pros, is these characters. It's just the characters they're so fun and so interesting, and even when they're cliche, the voice acting's so good for them that they're just great. Plus, every one of these characters operates a completely different way in combat, even from the same class, because from what I can tell, there's only 3 classes. There's Saboteurs, there's Sneaks, and there's Bruisers. Bruisers are your fighter tanks. Saboteurs are like your thiefy kind of rogues. Well, your Sneaks are your super rogues, but your Saboteurs are kind of more like in between. They all operate completely different. I have 2 different Bruisers on my team. One of them is Judith Harlow, which is this large lady character with a shield and a pistol. And then I have Ingrid, who is kind of a smaller blonde woman in a coat. And Ingrid is all about like action points on attack, close combat melee attacks, and moving from one to another fast and quickly, so that she can really like finish off people. She's a finisher. She can finish off 3 or 4 people in a row if they're already wounded. Whereas then you have the Judith, who is a tank. She's just an absolute tank. She can't really move well. She's almost the opposite of Ingrid, and in the same class, as that she just sits there and she's all about taking damage. It was stuff like that I found really, really cool and interesting. And to add into that, one of the things I've always found about these games, especially when you have classes, it's like if you're taking more than one of one class, you're probably in trouble. Now again, I only got about 5 to 10 hours in, and I was playing on the normal difficulty, so maybe at the harder difficulties this changed. But my favorite team so far is Judith, Ingrid, and Latif, who's a sneak. So he does the recon and stuff, while the two bruisers, you have a tank and a fighter, and they just combo everything to death. I think that like that's really cool. That you could like you could really change up the characters. The characters, every character feels like its own character with its own specialties and sets of abilities. And to add even more into that, you have this kind of weird secondary card system, which gives them more abilities, but any ability you want on them, which can kind of change how they play in the battle, which is really cool. My next pro is the Snappy Combat. Big thing with CRPGs, like Wasteland 3 I played a lot of. There's a couple others. And like one of my biggest problems with them is sometimes you can spend like an hour to 2 hours in a fight, and it's just stressful, and then when you die, you're just like, man, I gotta start over from the beginning. I never felt that way with the combat in this, or the missions for that matter. Missions have usually like 3 to 4 areas where there's bad guys. And the combat's very quick and fast, especially with the lower number bad guy missions. And you can save in between each thing, at least on the normal difficulty. So for a guy who doesn't have a ton of time, who's got a little time to play here and there, it was really nice to jump in and get like a fight in and then save and jump out. And I could do all of that within like an hour or so. So that was really nice and really respectable for a CRPG to be able to do that. It's super rare. Even in the missions where I forgot to save between fights and I died, I never felt like, oh God, I've got to do all of that again. I kind of felt like, okay, no problem. And then I went through it again because none of the missions... I mean, I think the longest the mission has taken me is 2 hours, and that's because I'm searching and defeating everybody. So I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that part of it, and I like it. I also will also say that I like the fact that, again, for a CRPG, this is rare. It works better on the controller than it does on the keyboard and mouse, in my opinion. The mouse, I found the mouse controls a little weird, and you still have to use some buttons, whereas most of these games are like point and click, whereas the controller, it's really refined to it. And often whenever I'm playing a CRPG, I always tend to end up with a keyboard and mouse just because there's just too much you can do, and it just makes it easier to be able to point and click on things, whereas with the controller it just works seamlessly really well. So now we got to go into the cons. We got to talk about some cons here. Okay, so biggest one is bugs and optimization. And of course, this is stuff that's going to be eventually fixed. Obviously, there was already a couple of patches, a day one patch and another patch that I feel has made it a smoother experience. However, still, when you go into recon mode, which is a mode where you can kind of look at the whole map, you hit these like lurching frame rate drops that are very obvious and kind of annoying. There's also a few times where like you'll end up, an action will happen and it'll just sit on the two characters in the cinematic cam for a really long time, making you almost think it's frozen and then switch over. I actually had one bug where one of the characters I couldn't move them when we got to real-time combat. Like, it was just impossible to click the move option for them. And again, after this last patch, some of these kind of went away. It still sucks to deal with that, and I think it is still a little rough in that area, and that we should definitely it's got to be pointed out in this. There's just no way. If I'm playing it for 5 hours and I'm noticing it that much, I've got to mention it. My next big one is the cinematic cam. This, first of all, I love the fights in this because you can almost see the fights in your mind, like in a more cinematic light. Like the game almost creates an inspiration in you to kind of see the game, to see it a little bit more cinematically. And every time you attack, it'll drop into like a cinematic cam where it drops into ground level so you can see your character kind of really deck the bad guy or shoot the bad guy or something. Overall, I love this feature. The problem is that all of these maps are incredibly tight with objects and grass and other things, which is cool. I like the mapping. There's no real giant areas where it's hard to find cover. It's much more like a strategic move through a bunch of stuff. The problem is that this cinematic cam cannot count the number of times it's dropped into a wall, it's dropped into a piece of cover, it's dropped into a crate, and you can't see what's happening, and it just takes you right out of it. Like, as much as it puts you in there when you're seeing it good, it takes you right out when it goes bad. And it goes bad probably, I'd say, 2 out of 5 times, and that's too many times for it to go bad, which is just really annoying. I don't like that. The last con is a very personal con for me, and it's nitpicky. So I want to give you that ahead of time. As a player, the narrative linear thing doesn't really do it for me, usually. And that being said, I feel like this game misses some opportunity for some procedural generation that it doesn't have. I think the procedural generation on the levels, as I've said, is a little bit limited. And there's no procedurally generated characters, which I feel like this game would like. I mean, you couldn't do voice work for them, obviously, but I would love some extra characters that you could stick on a team here and there or something like that. Just isn't there, which is super... I don't know, it just seems like a missed opportunity to me. I also have a hard time seeing an end game in this, and not every game needs an end game, I know, but this is one of those games that I would love to, after I see that main ending and destroy the Banished Court, have like that map where I can keep doing stuff for some reason, some minor end game, almost like a Torchlight thing. If anybody remembers that thing, where you'd go through the main dungeon, the 40-some floors of the main dungeon, and once you defeated it, you got this constantly procedurally generated level scaling dungeon to go through. I would love to see something like that in this, and I don't feel like it's there. I could be wrong. I've only played 5 hours. I have not finished it, but it just, I don't know, it feels like slight bit of missed opportunity on the uniqueness level. I never feel like my experience is different from anybody else's. And that's one of my things that, like, I like that unique, like, these are my characters, this is my world sort of feel. Again, real nitpicky and very specific to me, but if you are like me, this might be something that slightly irks you. So, am I going to stick with this game? I'm definitely going to stick with this game. I at least want to see how it ends. The character work is so phenomenal, it keeps me in it. The way they work together, the combos, also, like, every level of this game is engaging in an incredibly intelligent way. And that's something I like. Is it the greatest CRPG ever made? Most certainly not. Is it the most big CRPG ever made? Definitely not. But what they did is they took the systems they had and they made those systems very, very engaging. You want to see the next voiceover line. You want to see the next storyline. And as far as combat, you want to see all the combos you can do. There's so many ability combos and characters working off other characters. Just to give you an idea, I love to put Overdrive, or Overwatch, where you kind of put a character up pointing a gun at a certain area, and if anybody moves through it, he shoots them. And then my shield person who can throw a sticky mine on people. I like to throw a sticky mine on somebody right in front of her, shield bash so that that person moves backwards into the Overwatch, the person shoots, and the mine explodes. It, like, stuff like that, really cool, like 3 and 4 level combos that I just love. So I'm definitely going to stick with this. And that's it. That's the review. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Let me know in the comments below. And quick extra plug, I also run a tabletop role-playing game company called Axiom Games LLC. We released a system for our whole thing from going forward called Single Mod. It is on itch.io for only $6. Please, if you're interested in that, go check it out. And if you're on the fence about it, I am going to be releasing a series of videos that kind of tour the systems of it, so you can check out here. Other than that, you can reach us on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord. Links in the description below. Influence us in all of our shows from there. As usual, as you keep watching them, I'll keep making them. See you guys next time.
It's done, Mr. Luck. Mr. Marteau's generator is a smoldering wreck.
No sign of Marteau himself, though.
A shame.
I was hoping to get a look at the great American industrialist.
Be glad he wasn't there. Marteau Industries makes a ton of stuff, but it's their weapons division that keeps the lights on. And I hear old Trace personally field tests his prototypes.
But your sabotage set back his operations. My informants have confirmed it.
Yeah, that'll keep him out of the tower. Though I'm still unclear on the how.
I don't think you'd believe me if I told you.
Try us, why don't you?
At the top of the tower, at its crown, sits an energy source, greater than anything else on Earth. If any of the three-court scions got their hands on it, there'd be nothing they couldn't do. This power is both dangerous and unstable, and taking control of it requires preparation. My informants are tracking the court's progress, and they grow closer by the day. That is why your sabotage missions are so critical. They buy us the time we need to reach the tower before the court can complete their preparations and set their plans in motion. But we can't hold off the court and find the tower at the same time. I need more agents.
Who and where, Mr. Locke?
There are two, each in different parts of the world. One is a combat medic, Ana Sofia Rodriguez. The other, an assassin who goes by Celestine. Both are on the court's bad side. Specifically, the court's third leader, Wolfram Strum.